how do we future-proof our kids in the age of digital scroll and AI and screen time, right? This is the Parenting Reboot, and we ask this and many more questions to tech experts, to parents, to coaches and consultants, and people working in the education space trying to figure out this problem one screen, one scroll at a time. I am Deepa, your host at the Parenting Reboot, and today with us, we have beautiful parents to a really adorable 3-year-old. This is Mohana and Joel. I have worked with Mohana way back when in Bangalore. We used to work in the same nonprofit together. Today, she is not just a mother, but she is also somebody who works very closely in the development sector and is trying to build a beautiful community as an aspiring parent coach. And with her is her husband, Joel, who has a background in tech, and he's working very closely with early stage startups to figure out how to integrate AI into their product uses. So welcome, Mohana. Welcome, Joel. Tell us all about your background. Tell us all about Zoya, your little one.
Thank you so much, Deepa, for that lovely introduction. Yeah, I think, for us, Joel always wanted to be a parent. And I think it was something that I was inspired by his just, want to be a parent, and his the fact that he did so much of like reading and learning even before even before we decided to be parents as two people. So I guess for us, having Zoya was one thing, but just the journey of parenting her has been really rewarding in its own way, and we've sort of really enjoyed the process so far. It's definitely had its share of ups and downs. We are learning on the go for sure. We've definitely not learned any. I mean, as much as reading you would do before, after, during, I think the process of parenting itself teaches you a lot, and you need to be flexible and agile to sort of like go with the flow of the child itself, because every child is in the end of the day super unique, super to themselves. Yeah.
I'm going to pause there because you guys might be one of the first few people that I have come across as parents or as a couple who've said, we did so much of homework, we did so much of reading, because I'm a new mom myself. And one of the realizations at least I've had in the past 1 year is that when you have so many internships, college degrees to prepare you to become an engineer or a consultant, you spend like 15 years to 20 years to being ready for the job you meant to be doing. Nobody teaches you how to be a parent, right? It should actually be a PhD. It should be a life skill probably taught from early on. I feel like I see Joel nodding, so I want to pivot to you, Joel, on that.
So that's what I think. It was a question of not that I think I've been preparing for it without realizing that we were preparing, like in the sense of, I think like maybe a decade ago, I was reading some TED talk about puppy-friendly puppy training, right? Like, for example, I think as Zoe was born, like all these various threads of reading started to kind of combine, and you start to see common patterns and stuff. So I think I wanted to read, like, what to expect when you're expecting, but like a book like that, we never ended up getting, or I never ended up getting into. It was more about just reading about, like, let's say developmental psychology, or like, you know, puppy training, or like, different things, and then trying to apply that when we had Zoe. And I think the point was that as much as we felt like we had done our best to prepare, um, when the child actually turns up, then you have to let go of whatever you think, like, it should be or how it can be, and then just kind of be like, okay, like right now what is needed, or like right now what's the scene. I mean, preparation is one part, then there can be over preparation, then there can be like rigidness. So I think at least the journey for me has been about like letting go of like how it should be, and then like meeting, let's say, Zoe wherever she's at. And then, so I think Mo has been super instrumental in like helping me like get into that in the moment kind of thing. So that's been a little bit of the journey.
Mm. So how old is your little one? Like, I believe she's 3 years old.
So she just turned 3, like a week ago.
Yeah.
Three going on teenager.
Oh. Three. So I mean, I want to lay the foundation here, right? Like, we are entering a tech tech era, right? We've been in this tech era ourselves when we saw the introduction of internet. We saw the boom of social media. We're still grappling with the effects of social media. as adults ourselves, right? And we are having babies that are born direct as digital natives. They are seeing nothing but technology around them. They're super connected and almost hyper connected, right? So what big shifts are you seeing in parenting, that would be necessary or that would be different from perhaps what our parents did when they were raising us for a tech-centered future, like from your own experience of parenting Zoe for 3 years?
If I understand your question, you're saying how is parenting different for us than it was for previous generations?
Yes.
Do you
I
have a
think
thing that
that's essentially what I'm saying.
No, I can add it.
No, that's a large question. I think in some sense there's both more isolation and more connectedness, in the sense of like I feel like our and again this is my impression of how they might have raised us. They had, I mean, I remember growing up, we didn't really lock the front door. The neighbors would just sort of wander in, have tea, wander out, like it was just more like connected in some sense. There were physically other people there that you could be like, hey, I'm just going to the store. Can you watch my kid? Like that sort of thing was more normal. Friends of mine have talked about like, leaving the house, wandering in the neighborhood, and then like turning up at dinner time, right? So it's unheard of. This is unthinkable for, I mean,
Right
now whether that is our like, we're too stressed or like this is what the world is like now. This is unthinkable for us to kind of be like, hey, like watch my kid. I'll just pop out and come back. Or even to have neighbors wander in is sort of strange. And at the same time, I know details about some parent who's trying something with their child on the other side of the globe who has probably zero cultural overlap with me, but I know like details of like how they're raising their child. So it's a very weird kind of like dynamic that maybe our generation is sort of the first ones to be parenting in this kind of environment, which means now we have to like talk to our parents about what we've learned, and like it's all these dynamics that need to be like managed. So I feel like we are in some sense like uncharted territory, like figuring out how to parent in a hyper connected but hyper isolated kind of world.
Now, I was just saying that I think it's also like it's super interesting because technology when we were growing up was limited as well. The access was limited. The sort of like understanding of it was limited by our parents as well as by us as children as well, right? So today, but however, it's so accessible for Zoya as a child. Like, I mean, we do have screen times, but I think it's about like understanding and like at least for me and Joel, it has been about okay, how do we approach screen time with Zoe? Like, how do we introduce technology to Zoya for in a more structured format, in a more controlled environment, and how do we do it in a way that it's because what can happen today with technology is it can be an isolating experience for the child itself, right? And which is basically the when we used to watch TV, I remember it was a family affair. Like we come in and we all used to watch together. We knew exactly when the show would come. So we would wait for watching that show or that movie. We would know, okay, we finish all our work, we finish all our homework by a particular time so that we can sit down in front of the TV and watch this show that comes up at Harry Potter that comes up at whatever time or whatever, right? But today the access is so available, like instant, and it's so like so then it's two ways. One is, of course, like as parents, it's helped us to manage a few tasks when she's watching some screen. We sort of regulate it. We ensure that there are boundaries around it. We keep a timer on the phone itself for 10 minutes so she knows exactly when to step away from the screen. But it's allowed us to sort of like do things. But at the same time, I feel like it's for Zoya at least, it's like, hey, I have access to entertainment in the tip of my finger. If I want it, I can get it. And I don't have to wait for it. I don't have to sort of, plan around it. There is no, I don't need patience around it. It's just sort of available through a screen. Something we do very actively is we don't have a TV at home. So we don't, so that's not like a screen which is available for her at all points of time. We don't have iPads at home. We, of course, only have phones, which we use, which then we sort of like, and she knows, okay, phone is for video calls. So that's primarily her association with the phone itself to, contact her grandparents or whatever. And we try to restrict just one show at a time for her. And she knows exactly when those shows timings are. Like we do 5 minutes before her snack time in the morning and 5 minutes before her evening nighttime routine. So she gets like her screen time during those two periods of time. And so in her mind, okay, this is when I can actually open my screen. But apart from that, we're sort of like engaging with her. But it also comes, I think, in today's time and age. I mean, in comparison to our parents, I do feel like our parents had they didn't have to constantly keep themselves engaged either. They knew how to sort of like, go out, talk to a neighbor, go for a walk, take us to the park, allow us to sort of do what we wanted to do, like be free within the environment. But I think as parents, now there is this constant need for us to be engaged. We are constantly scrolling on our Instagram. We are constantly looking at YouTube videos. There's so much information coming at us as parents, which then like I feel is the sort of like, like, okay, then if we want to keep ourselves so engaged, of course, then we're constantly wanting our child to be so engaged as well. So the concept of boredom is sort of like lost in all of this. Yeah, so I guess that's yeah.
You've touched some amazing threads that I want to pull on just a bit, but one thing I want to continue keeping us in track on is the use or rather overuse of social media in day-to-day parenting, right? There's, like you said, so much of information available out there, both good, bad, neutral, um, from, learning about gentle parenting versus learning about, the right kind of food you can feed your toddler. It's endless, constant information on how to parent in the right way, right? So how are you guys finding that balance as parents yourself? And do you feel like you're constantly co-parenting with technology, right? Like you have a technology, it's your dictionary to co-parent.
Sure.
Yeah, you want to.
No, it's interesting. I mean, there's some actually no. What was standing out for me was the idea of like there are infinite people available online to teach you the right way to parent. At least that's what sort of stood out to me is that 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 rightness seems to be defined by like okay they can be well adjusted in school and they're healthy and they're like I don't know. There's some account I follow of this like she's maybe 12 or something. She's like a power lifter. So I'm like, oh wow, like let me get like go into that, or that's the wheels start to turn of like, oh, I can also make my child a chess grandmaster by whatever it is, 8 or this rubbish. Like I mean, this sort of thing, this pressure kind of builds. So it's like, hey, like if you do things the right way, your child will be well adjusted, healthy, successful. They'll get into Harvard or whatever the thing is, right? Um, and I feel like that degree of pressure I feel wasn't there as much for our parents. It was like just teach them, like feed them a normal amount, like they should do normal things, be a nice person, do reasonably well at school, like you'll probably be fine kind of thing. But like for I feel like for us it's like anything wrong with a child at any point for any reason is like immediately like something must be happening at home, or there is some gap. So as much as we try to regulate our own social media consumption, which is hard. I feel like I've only recently realized that I'm somewhat addicted to YouTube Shorts. I thought I was fine because I wasn't using Instagram. But suddenly I noticed that like, one free moment you open it up. I'd been justifying it to myself as like, oh, YouTube Shorts is educational. But like half the shorts are like Game of Thrones or like some, so it's full on entertainment. So as much as we're also trying to learn ourselves how to better manage our own consumption, we're also like, hey, can we constantly be engaging the child and like enriching her? And hey, look at this. What is this color? And how does this block fit into this thing? And so that's where that intersection happens, where there's a pressure on parents to enrich and develop the child quickly, the right way, whatever. And then there's this endless supply of experts online being like, oh, here's this toy, here's this thing, here's this playbook. Comment, comment success for my tips and I'll DM you. And it just rolls on and on and on. So, this then it's really about just slowing down and being like, um, there's one more point I wanted to share.
Yeah.
Is that this is all like the good part of the internet. Is like tips, tricks, food, toys, is I would still term it like useful. There's a whole other layer of like um just misinformation, just like actual like when Zoe was young, I was just watching something and this video was saying fathers should give skin time because like antibodies will go through the skin and sort of make the child more healthy or some weird like misinformation pseudoscience. So it's really hard where like there's also these other layers. You're trying to filter out like actively bad stuff, try to see what's useful, and then at the same time also sit with like, hey, do I really need to be 24/7 enriching this child? Like, can she just be like a baby, kind of thing? So then I guess that's the balancing of like co-parenting with with the phone, like with this other presence in the family.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me it's been like, I mean, there's negatives and a positive side to having so much information coming at you. I think the positive side is it's sort of it's it's developed my parenting style quite a bit. Like Joel said, of course, we need to really figure out, and something that we do between ourselves is we share. I mean, we have like a group which just says parenting reflections. So whatever we see that's interesting on the internet, we sort of share it on that group, and then Joel goes. If he's sharing it, I go through it and I send some notes around it. If I share it, he does. So what we try to do is, okay, like if something resonates with us, then okay, how do we sit down and incorporate that into our parenting style? And if Joel feels like, no, actually, this is not something I resonate with, or I feel like I don't resonate with that ideology or that thinking process, then we at least we're aligned. Okay, this is not something that we want to do in our parenting, right? So it's helped us to have those conversations and enrich us as parents as we sort of move forward. But at the same time, I think it has been super pressurizing as well, because when you see a 3-year-old on the internet reading and being able to read words, and you like, oh, there's almost an immediate, I mean, it's my human tendency to be like, oh, Zoe's not doing that. Oh my God, like that's not happening. Like, why? Like, what should we do differently? Like, what are we doing wrong? Immediately the question is, what are we doing wrong? What are we not doing at our home that's allowing her to be able to do that by herself, right? So I think for me it has been really sitting with myself and being like, like really tuning into the fact that Zoe is an individual and she's unique and she is different. She doesn't have to be similar to every other child out there, and she has her own pace of growth, and she will grow at her own pace. She might be successful, she might not be successful, and all of that is regardless. Right now, all my responsibility and all I have control over is to give her food, keep her healthy, keep her clean, keep her just
Yeah.
present in this world and alive. I guess alive is like the word. I'd like to just keep her alive, like, right? And I think
Just be
that's
there for her.
just be there for her in all your in being able to be present. So yeah, I guess that's been just my approach to how I've taken the internet on. I've used it as a tool to sort of help me, but I've also kept it away when I've felt like that doesn't serve the purpose that I have. So in my parents.
That's really good that you both have these kind of grounding in reality practices, sort of like little traditions that you've started in your own family that help you set the focus back on what's real versus what is virtual, right? I want to ask you both, what is that one unrealistic parenting myth that you've seen online that set these standards or this bar up so high that you feel like, no, this is something. I know, Joel, you mentioned a bit about it briefly, but do you guys want to go in detail about an unrealistic trend that it's setting for parents?
Sure, sure, sure. I mean, I spoke about some of the more, my child should
Yeah.
be a chess genius, or like my child should have perfect pitch and all this sort of thing. Um, Something that for me, like I think I'm still not fully over is like these videos of these kids with like huge playrooms, right? Like they'll have these indoor jungle gyms and like, they'll be hanging from the wall and swinging and climbing and all sorts of crazy stuff. Like for some reason, that's like, oh, this is how, free range child. Like this is how a child should be, and we're in this box. Oh no, am I depriving my child or something like that? Then I'm like, oh, are we providing enough? Is there enough space? Is there enough toys? Is there enough activities? So that like worry about like a child should be like constantly, I don't know what the word is, like supplied with stuff
Yeah.
is something that's like hard to deal with in, because like the in a world where like that consumption is so easy, because some of the dads who make this stuff will make it themselves. So like, here's a low cost way to do things, and they'll make like an extensive playroom. They'll, I mean, again, this is all like American context. So again, there's this constant like management of, okay, who am I, where am I, what can I do, what does my child need? So finally what's helpful is just to ground into like, who is my child and what does she need, and then kind of see whether something's relevant or not. Because like when she was young, we saw some ad for this kid was they'd stuck a mirror on the wall and they'd put like crossbars. So I'm like, hey, is that a thing that we have? Okay, it's like, so he just bought 2 towel hangers and bolted it to the wall and put like mirrors. And it helped her. Like she would love like climbing up and sort of like looking at herself. So, stuff like that. Once you kind of clue into like where is the child developmentally and emotionally and whatever, then this stuff becomes useful, and then you can kind of deploy it. But at least that's something I struggle with, is like stuff.
Yeah. Ideally, even before parenting, right? Like for me, I think the biggest unrealistic thing about like um pregnancy itself was that, oh, it needs
I
to
was
be
going to
this
say,
like glorious looking thing where you need to sort of like, make these amazing milkshakes and make these amazing like, looking food, and you're just like having a gala time when you're pregnant. And I think that's what the internet makes you believe pregnancy is, or should look like. And when I got into, I mean, and honestly, like when I imagined my pregnancy to be this like beautiful experience, and it wasn't. It was just downright like sloppy, and I was like, it was bad. It was terrible. Like my pregnancy was super, super difficult, right? And I think, I, yeah, I think the internet can make you believe that everything is perfect, even parenting children, like everything needs to look perfect. But honestly, there are so many gray areas that the internet doesn't really showcase. And it just doesn't, because it doesn't get the number of likes you want or the comments you want. And that's something that we've had to sort of like really factor into our understanding that, what we see on the internet is not the whole truth. It's only half of what we see. And we've really needed to like tune into that, hey, like, there are messy times. Your child is going to be yelling at you. Your child is going to be like, screaming and running around and throwing things and, doing other things which we are not really seeing on the internet. But like it's going to happen, and you need to be present and you need to be focused on how to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. So like just that line of perfection, the perfect way of content can be shown on the internet. That's not how life is actually. And like just being able to like understand that has been a journey for us.
it's so funny that we all, as average humans, despite having tech exposure or not having that tech background, know what is real or not on social media, right? We can see through content,
Yeah.
but still, it is so hard to disconnect at times, right? You feel like, oh, this is setting a good expectation. This is what I need to expect from myself. And if my child is not doing it, therefore I'm feeling as a parent, right? We're all sucked into this wormhole, I feel. Um,
100%.
uh, I want to pivot a bit and talk about the village around you, right? The community, the parenting community. Tell me a little bit more about how that experience has been since postpartum to now. Do you guys have help to raise Zoya? Is she going to daycare? How's the situation looking like?
Maybe we can talk about like
So I think from the very beginning, Joel and me were very clear that we wanted our parents involved in our pregnancies, right? Like in our in the help that we wanted. Initially, I think when we started off, when we just got pregnant, we were like, oh, we're going to do this thing on our own, because that's what again the internet shows you. Like you can do all of this on your own, right? And we were sort of like geared to that. We were living in Goa at that point, and like we were doing our stuff. He was working. I'd taken a break, and I was just going to go back into a job. And things sort of went south when my um, um my symptoms of of like of HCG, of like
what was initially like severe morning sickness was like, then it's
Hyp-
hypomesis gravidarum.
yeah. So when all of that sort of struck in, then we had to bring my mother in from.
She flew down.
So she flew down into Goa. She had to be with me because I was completely like bedridden at that point of time. And of course, like if you needed one person who had to work, because of course you need the money and the ability to sort of like save and things like that, you're going to have a baby. So we needed the support. So my mom sort of came in. So she was a huge support during my pregnancy period. And once we also like noticed that, okay, we need definitely a team of people. Like we need people who can come in and help in cleaning the house, in helping us cook food for ourselves, to sort of like help in all of those different pieces, right? And thankfully we were living in India. I mean, we live in India,
Yeah.
so it's accessible. We had that access. It's not the same in so many different other countries. And it's something that we're grateful for, because we were able to sort of get these different people. So when we moved to Coimbatore as well, my parents lived there. I lived with my parents. Just living in my own house made such a huge difference in my pregnancy journey. As soon as I moved to Coimbatore, I felt so much better. I felt so much lighter. We had like my as soon as Zoe was born, my dad was assigned like cleaning and ironing duty. My mom was like in
Her mom and me took shifts.
yeah,
It's
so he was like morning duty and Joel was night duty. So like, we were able to sort of like build those rhythms for ourselves. And then, of course, we moved to Bangalore after Zoe was about, I think, 6 months old. And when we moved to Bangalore, then we were able to eventually hire for help as well, because again, access for that was so much easier when we were in Bangalore. And we got a beautiful, lovely nanny who was able to come and live with us. She didn't just take care of our baby, she took care of us as well. She took care of me postpartum. Like, she ensured that I got the right food, the right, rest, everything. His parents lived so very close to us, which meant they kept sending us food. Anytime that we required them to come in and stay at home to take care of Zoe, they were available and they were accessible. So just having grandparents around, having help around, very quickly we realized we don't have to do this on our own. We can get help, we can talk to people, and we can learn how to set boundaries with the people who we are getting help with.
Sure.
Like, I think that was something which was so crucial for us, that even though we are sort of like, getting help from our grandparents, it can sometimes get difficult because their parenting style is so different from our parenting style. But at the same time, just being able to establish, and I think this is where we created a group with both sets of grandparents. It had both me and Joel in it. It had both my sister and his sister in it. So we used to send information on it. We sent updates about Zoya. We kept them involved in Zoya's, growth and development. So we felt like they were part of that. They had ownership. It was like building a team around Zoya to take care of Zoya, and building that team meant we needed them to have ownership as well, and in the way that we wanted ownership for them to have.
And
Right?
I was saying the aunts, just to like Zoe's aunts have been super mindful and like champions of translating what we're saying for the grandparents in some sense. Because we might say this is how a thing needs to be done, but then the answer will be the first ones to demonstrate what that might mean. For then the grandparents who might need more time or like more demonstration, which we might not like be in that context to do or like to hold that space. And of course, like Zoe just like full love for her aunt, so it's sort of worked out.
And just not we of course had family and we had like help assistance to sort of do that, but we also very quickly realized that we had issues, like for example with Zoe sleeping, like, and our sleep getting deprived, right? So which meant that, by deprived I mean like we weren't really showing up the next day for Zoe in all fairness with the presence that she required, and which meant that we needed to bring in a person who could help us understand how sleep works with children, right? And this was of course not the sleep training where you just let your child cry and sort of let them be, but we had a way in which we wanted to do it. We wanted to ensure we were present with the child, we allowed her to help, but we wanted to learn how
we needed somebody with so we got a sleep coach who like actually coached us through the thing. It wasn't just content. So these crucial times we've like gotten paid help to coach us on to how to do something better.
And we were okay paying that money because I felt like you don't learn any of this, before you start to become a parent. So sometimes people who've sort of taken the effort to learn it and go deep dive into it is important. You need to get them on board to sort of like help you through this journey. And they're part of that village. In the modern village, it's just not family. It is these different other people who sort of have to step in to help you, because it's a very different time that we're parenting in as well. We're parenting in a time when both parents need to work. It's very difficult if both parents aren't working to be able to, make ends meet. We are parenting in a time when it's not too safe for our child to just go around and, run around the neighborhood and come back. It doesn't work that we have, I mean, in India at least, we have like Blinkit drivers and Swiggy drivers, and we have like Ubers and like the road is packed. So there's no way you can just send your kid out to the basement and, have them come back at a particular duration of time. So like, there is a need to sort of like get certain things done. And I, at one point, really wanted to understand how do I work on myself as a parent. So I got myself into a course which spoke about parenting. It took it helped me understand parenting at a deeper level, not just about, when a child does something, it's not that the child is doing something. It's actually something that's triggering you as a parent. And it's something that's internal for you. So how do we work as parents first how do we work as individuals first before we even deal with something as a child, with our child, right? So all of these people have sort of like curated our village in different ways. And of course, then the technology exists as well. So then,
and then I guess the last piece is that like as Zoe's grown older, we also have other parents, other friends of us who are parents, other people that parents of the children at her Montessori, so that extended network is also like for us to kind of meet with other parents at our developmental stage. we can sort of talk to and share notes with, or sometimes it's just about venting to each other and being like, this is so frustrating, whatever. So that I think that there's multiple layers of these of the village. There's in-person, online, content versus material. I think one thing to add is that in an age of information overload, these sorts of hyper curated pieces are then even more essential. So like a course, like you don't have to spend time reading 18 books. You kind of just read 3 reviews, being like, is
Yeah.
this course thing? What are the credentials of the person doing it? And then you can do the thing. So then you know that what you're getting is based on some foundation.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it's unrealistic to expect parents to like upskill themselves on everything, like nutrition and sleep and health, and it's too much. So I think this outsourcing, for lack of a better word, is like part of the village.
It's so interesting and well put, actually, I must say, because a lot of this parents find themselves scrambling to figure out after the baby is in their lives, like
Yeah.
as soon as the baby is born. Because up until then, the focus, as you very well put, Mo, is this glamorousness or gloriousness about pregnancy, right? The focus is obviously on the mother's body, but also the baby's health, right? Like I remember right up until the end of my pregnancy, not so much attention was paid on me, but like all the ultrasound scans and everything was to do with, okay, the growth, the development of the baby. The baby has a new finger, a new arm, all exciting and great.
Yeah.
But what am I doing mentally, and what is my partner doing mentally to prepare themselves to bring this child into our lives, aside from fixing a car seat or putting together a crib and painting your nursery, right? There's so much more upskilling needed
Yeah.
to really show up as parents. I also want to talk a bit about your background, Joel. You mentioned that you have a background in tech and you're also working, I believe, with early stage startups to figure out how to integrate AI into their, products or the work they do. Can you tell me a bit about like how you're involved in the tech world, and then when you come back home, where do you see it apply, or where do you see the realities of it through?
I mean, AI is sort of the more complex things, but I think in some sense, in the very beginning, it was about, I mean, my natural instinct was to see where can we integrate tech to deal with the overwhelm, right? Um, Zoe was born and we're all like super sleepy. Or actually, even before Zoe was born, like I had one app for like um,
Growth of the
timing the
baby.
timing. Oh yeah, the growth thing. Oh yeah, the growth thing was its own thing of like milestones and
Yeah.
I didn't have time to read, what to expect when you're expecting. So there are a bunch of apps for that of like, oh, at this stage the baby is a grapefruit
Apple.
or whatever it is. So that was helpful, in that sense. Then as I got closer to the delivery, I had one app for like the timing between contractions and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which like I was panicking down to it last minute to be like, when should we go to the hospital? So there were things like that. And then when the baby was born, we were like, I had one app for like tracking everything of like feeds and weights and which breast was used last and duration, all this crazy stuff. And then it
You
was
were tracking all of this and
no.
not
So what
more.
we did was I found an app which was like you could add the team to it. So I had two of us and her mom. So I would track things like diaper changes and height, weight, different food or medicine. Medicine, I remember tracking temperature, stuff like that. And I'm like, Mona, you have to log, which side you used last because doctor said blah blah blah. And I got like very like I mean, and again, like I think part of that was my own. It was a stress response basically. It was like, how can I do whatever I can and bring whatever knowledge I have to be able to like help because I can't do anything. Like I can't feed her. Now actually technically we could have switched to formula and done that and I could have fed her. But again, it comes back to this like, no, there's a right way to do it. The right way is that the child is 100% breastfed
Yeah.
and it's fresh milk and you shouldn't express it and store it because germs. This perfectionism, we just made our own lives much harder than it should have been.
Yeah.
And then rather than just like focus on like, hey, what are we stressed about? What can we do to reduce the pressure?
Yeah.
The baby will be fine. If you have to swap in with formula, the pediatrician saying it's fine, but no, we're like, oh no, my baby, whatever. And then instead of doing that kind of work or having that kind of discussion, like we're separately going into like, okay, I'll use this app and we'll track everything, and that way, things will be more optimized or things will be more chill or whatever. And a year later, after this whole like the app sort of outlived its usefulness, She's like, hey, bro, like that app actually made things more. Maybe we could speak about that. Like the thing made it more stressful, not less. So
Yeah.
there. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No.
So, like in that sense, there is this frame that comes in that you can solve a problem with tech, right? And a lot of the times, like I mean, you can use technology to solve a technology problem, but you can't use technology to solve like a human problem or like okay, hey, there are just two people like super sleep deprived. Can we make things easier? Can we add support? Or can we remove some expectation that's like unreasonable? Can we have a discussion about what that might be, right? That's not a. I mean, you like we can journal about it. We can say that a journal is a kind of technology, but fundamentally, it's that work. It's that conversation, mindfulness, sitting with your own discomfort. Half the challenge is that like you feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
and you're looking for something to like remove the pain,
Yeah.
and then it just makes things worse. So it's again like over time I've had to learn to rely less on the technology is kind of the challenge.
You would wake up at night to feed the baby and you're like, did you track it? And then
Yeah.
once I left the tracker on and it tracked for 6 hours on one side, and I was like, oh my God, my data's all screwed up now. So anyway, it reminded me of that.
No, absolutely.
You have a background in tech yourself. I believe you're working with startups trying to figure out how to integrate AI into the work they're doing. So tell us a bit more about, how you're so, connected on your work side of things, but when you come back home, probably you don't see yourself or your family using tech as much, and you want to try to, I don't know if that's the right way to put it, stay away from AI as much as possible.
Very.
No, yes, thank you. So yeah, like let's say there was a client project that recently wound up where actually it was kind of a journaling app. So the intent of the app was to kind of help people be more mindful, understand their own patterns, understand what's in the way of like them becoming the person they're trying to be. And the founders are sort of non-technical. I mean, they've spent time. They've sort of grown a community of people who kind of do a particular journaling practice and are able to improve their lives. And there can be a temptation for non-technical people to be like, hey, these models and these AI and this tech is pretty magical, and it is. I mean, for all intents and purposes, this stuff it's crazy.
It's
Like what
magic.
we've been able to do, it's
Yeah.
magic in some sense, right? Being like, oh, it can't write C++, great. I mean, it's these are powers we've unlocked somehow, right? It's weird, and we should regard them as like, like in movies and stuff. Like you find a book of spells, like you don't just open it up and start reading. Like you sort of kind of be like, okay, hey, like what is this kind of thing. So with in client work, sometimes it can become a bit of expectation management where like, hey, this stuff is so great. Why can't we just give all the data to the AI and like figure out what it says and just take that and give it to a customer, or give that to a user, right? And the work is to kind of slowly demonstrate that like, okay, this is the outcome we're trying to achieve for a user. Their quality of life is improving or their whatever, and then this is what an AI is saying. First of all, how can we control what it's saying? How can we kind of be sure that it's not randomly, doing something strange? Like there are all sorts of reports of these AIs are essentially again apps that are optimized for engagement. So if you use ChatGPT and you say, hey, I have this problem, or draft an email, it'll always be like, hey, would you also like an image? Would you like a WhatsApp formatted? Like it's always giving you the next thing because it's optimized for engagement, and there's nothing sort of evil about that. That's just how it's built. So now there's this some story about I think one of these, like you can create a character and then like talk to it. So this guy had created, I think this is the story, he created like an AI girlfriend, and the AI girlfriend went into this direction of like, hey, if you were to I mean, maybe this is a touchy topic, but like it was sort of encouraging him towards suicide so that they could be together in the digital afterlife or some weirdness, right? Now, I mean, this is also part of the game. Like these models don't have necessarily a morality this way, that way. Ultimately, the person making the app is responsible or should know like what it's doing, how it's made. So I think in in some ways, AI is a completely new thing in terms of integrating it or understanding how to use it. In some ways, it's a little bit of like, same old in the sense of like the barriers to adoption are really human. It's like, if a sales team is trying to get more optimized, you can't just chuck AI at it. You have to be like, okay, what are the playbooks? What are the thing? How clean is the data? It's a lot of hygiene work. Then train the people on how to use it. Then they use it. Then they get results. Then that sales team is more effective, right? So that's always been true. AI is just a new toolbox that we can use to make things go faster, make things go better. So, I mean, I have some experience with like integrating. I use these systems myself so that I can be faster. Like what used to take me like 3 to 5 days to do is now like a half an hour thing, or like a 1 day thing max. So I have my own like work to do in terms of like figuring out how I can be a better consultant or generate more value kind of thing. Then I can help clients do that as well for them, for their employees, for their workflows. But then when I see startups like immediately take that into like AI psychologists, AI therapists, AI tutors, right? Like so the I mean that is where I'm like, hey, like, are we sure? Like, how are we? I mean, yeah, like, can we go a little bit slower because we're putting kids in front of this, right? Like, as you said, like we are ourselves dealing with the ramifications of social media, and we have to. I mean, we're dealing with it, positive and negative. Um, Now I get a lot of value out of AI because I know how to think, or like I know my own mind to some degree. Whereas recently, I think this was a big update from OpenAI. They had done some update where OpenAI, the 4.0 model had just started what's called glazing people. So whatever you
Yeah,
say
yeah,
would
I
just be
remember
like,
seeing
yeah, that's the best thing ever. And they sort of rolled it back and they apologized and they like, blah, blah, blah. But then some news reports have come out about like people got so sucked in that ChatGPT had convinced them that they were God, that they were like prophets. And like there was one person who is fighting with his wife, like, hey, like if you don't use ChatGPT, we might have to break up. Because he believed that he had brought his ChatGPT account to life. Like this is an actual thing, right? The model glazed him so much that he was like, I have the divine spark of like divinity, and I've like brought this model to life. It's some crazy, wild stuff. This is probably like a 45, 50-year-old. I mean, I don't know the age, but these are grown people getting these like negative outcomes. And sort of the speed with which we're putting this stuff in children's hands
And it's, I think,
is weird.
where it sort of like breaks the thing is like a lot of toys now are AI integrated.
Yeah.
So you have like children-based toys. So we've actually made a decision that we will actually not bring any of those into our household.
Yeah.
And even people who may gift us, we've actively decided not to utilize them within our space. For now, I feel like a 3-year-old is just she's too little to be exposed to, and a tool which sort of like takes a photo of something and then on
Yeah.
the app it starts moving.
The
Like it's
AI
just
stuff.
unnecessary. I feel like right now is an age to be grounded in reality, not in something that feels feels out of their scope of imagination, right? There will be a time when we will have to introduce like a Zoya to the internet. I mean, of course, she's right now introduced to the internet by in means of screen time and things like that. But there will be a time when she will need to learn about AI because it's going to be a part of our life, and we can't keep them away from it either, right? But I think as parents, we'll need to decide when to do that introduction. How are we going to sort of like introduce AI into our household, right? Part of our day to day right now by like, sometimes I put my meal plan and let it like give me options and things like that. So things like that, it's already making my life easier. But introducing Zoya to it through right now, the biggest way I think households are introducing it to children is through these toys and through apps or through like phone or your iPads or whatever. But I guess that's an decision we've taken to sort of like not do that, to ensure that we are not um just giving her a toy to play with. It's like an AI feature on it, which she will probably not understand at all at this point. And even if she understands it, it's just too soon for her to understand it. Is our understanding. We could be completely wrong about the way we're going about this right now, but at least the way we are thinking about it is that it's so overwhelming for us itself. So I can only imagine what a 3-year-old might be, how much time it might take for that 3-year-old to process it. So I think it's important for us to sort of stagger that learning process, take it slow. There is a time and age for them to learn about it and understand it. And definitely, like, if we learned about it when we were in our early teens or late teens, they'll probably have learned about it a little earlier than that because that's just the way life is and that's how the world is running at the moment, and we can't keep them away from it as well, unless we decide to like live in a farmhouse away from everything, like off the grid.
I was gonna add that, like, I mean, even social media for that matter, like ideally, like we would be, again, I don't know how possible it'll be, but ideally we have her off social media till at least 16, 17,
Yeah.
ideally. Because like, I mean, there are already, I mean, social, like Facebook, etc., has been a thing for at least a decade, 12-ish years now so far. And there's very clear evidence that, especially for girls, there's this marked drop in self-esteem and this marked, like you can, it literally the
Exactly.
launch of Facebook, and there's this sharp rise in like mental health issues
Mental health
around
issues,
girls,
yeah.
and like, suicide rates going up. Like it's already super well established.
Yeah.
So if we're saying that, AI and some of these tools are, um have the same drives as social media in terms of engagement, sort of, yeah, all of these sorts of same incentives exist.
Yeah.
And the social media, like vanilla social media, is bad enough. It's even more to say that, like, hey, we should be even more careful with like putting this new wave of stuff in front of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the world is magical enough without these things also. Like, there is plenty of other stuff to do.
Yeah.
So it's just coming from a little instinct to like protect or like,
Yeah.
just manage it a bit more. Be
And
more, yeah.
I think there's a need for us to also keep learning about the effects and the pros, because there are definitely positives to it as well, but there are obviously there are cons to it. So I think it's an important balance we need to play as parents. We can't completely keep them away from it, nor can we completely throw it on. There's like a journey we need to take them through. It's almost like we guide them through it, we
Yeah.
mentor them through that process of being. And I think I genuinely feel that as parents, if we can create a secure attachment for Zoya, where we can establish a relationship where she can talk to us about anything, whatever is happening with her, around her, she's able to come in. Like the first people she can think about is, hey, I'll go and tell my parents, and I know I can safely talk to them about anything.
Sure.
As long as we're able to create that environment, I think that's just the goalpost that we have, right? Like as long as we can create that environment, then it's okay. Like it's okay. Because in the end of the day, we have to let go at some point. When she turns 15, 16, we can't be like holding her and like not loving her to do anything. Like she will have to like fly out and like figure out the world for herself. And at that point, if we can just be back at home, available for her to have a conversation and be able to sort of like, open up about anything that she wants to, if we can build that right now in this 0 to 5 years, I think that's a win, is what I would sort of like consider. Yeah.
Yeah, laying a good foundation. That is so, so true. That is so, and as you said, secure attachment, right? So that there is trust and there is this, willingness to talk and be truthful to your parents and confide in them about whatever they're facing, right? So that is very important. There are a lot of opinions about this, but what do you think about sharenting, right? Parents who are not just passively scrolling on social media, but actively sharing their children's lives on social media. What do you think about that? And, what are some of the positive and negative effects if you've probably experienced that yourself?
No, no. Also just to check, like in terms of definition, is parenting like talking about parenting online, or like specifically, is it, for example, some people
Sharing your
post-
child online.
No, but for
Sharing
example,
your
like some people go for a party, they click a selfie, they post that the child is in that picture, right? As opposed to like, hey everybody, we're going to the park today, come with us on that vlog. So the vlog thing feels like sharing to
It's a
me versus
range. It's a range. It's a
there
full
is a bit of a
wide
range to it.
It's a spectrum, I guess.
There is, so I can maybe I can speak to something of that, where like we don't post her at all, in the sense of like, or if you post a picture, there's a her
Emoji.
face is obscured. Our family members been super like understanding about that. Some friends will like make fun. They'll be like, or like there's one guy who, like, whenever he sees Zoe in person, he'll be like, oh, you don't have your koala mask on, because usually like a koala mask or whatever. So there is some like haha about it. Now the fact of the matter is that I take photos of her on my phone. Those photos are backed up to Google Photos. That photos is going to Drive or whatever it is. So net, Google has pictures of her.
Yeah.
Then they keep Google Photos like, is this the same person as this? Is this the same person as this? So basically, I'm training the model on like recognizing her over the years. So Google has now, for all of us, that evolutionary model of like how her face evolved. So tomorrow, if society goes full on Minority Report, like, we have all been part of training these models to do this. If Facebook and, whoever's Sundar Pichai and Zuck like decide, then they'll share that data with each other. There is nothing, I mean, you cannot say that, oh, they're competitors, so there is that to advantage. No, like if it's financially feasible, they will do it at some point, right? And then at some point they'll sell it to the government. And so, I mean, I feel like for me, with this stuff, like looking at, Palantir and some of these trends like globally that are happening, they're aggressively deploying these sorts of facial recognition models, doing it in like third world countries, and then your India, some Hyderabad, I think, has now gone like, I think Hyderabad has like heavily rolled out facial recognition. Bangalore's like, there's a lot of surveillance going on. So I mean, again, we're talking about a spectrum of sharing stuff online, and then there's this other spectrum of like how it's being used. So sharenting is, as an individual, I'm sharing a thing online for to make money, essentially. I mean, like that's the line at which you're like doing it as a content engine.
Yeah.
As opposed to like I'm just sending this to keep my friends and family updated. So on public social media, her face is not there at all as much as we can control. If we're sharing stuff to family, we do that on like WhatsApp or like what feels like more of a walled garden.
Yeah.
And the like vlogging, kind of doing it for money, feels to me like, I mean, if you want to do content and you want to commoditize yourself, do that. Like we're here on a podcast now. Like we agree to do this. We have volition. We care about sharing a message. You care about, so there is a contract, there's an understanding of like we are participants in this together. If you want to commoditize your face, put it out there, that's fine. You've taken a decision. Like bringing your kids into that, and then now literally the camera is another like member of family outings. I feel icky watching that.
Yeah.
Because there was one couple that I think you watched a few years ago. They now have their like fifth child or fourth child, and I'm like, at what point is like making children like good for business? Because like the content around like my pregnancy and my the kid is born and like that gets views. So I'm feeling like if I were in her position, I wouldn't know which kid was the investment and which kid was like is my feeling. And so I'm projecting that onto her and being like, hey, like I definitely don't want to do that. So the money is where it gets like complex. And I would say the other layer, I mean, so yeah, I feel very strongly we shouldn't do sharing. And then the reason we are more aggressively even censoring her face is because like, hey, it's unclear, how this data is being used, what's happening, so in some sense, maybe this is where I'm like seeing all of these apps come out of like with like a 1 minute clip of somebody's voice. You can like clone that voice with like about 25 images of a person's head. You can create like a deep fake, right? So and then that stuff is just getting better over time. So it's kind of the wild west out there. So everybody's now the pressure falls to each individual to kind of protect themselves as much as you can. Like is there more we could do? Probably.
Yeah. We can just move to a farm. That's
where things are happy and jolly. No, I mean, it's interesting you talk about it from a commodification aspect, Joel. Like what my thinking also was around digital footprint, right? Just like we have physical footprints, the data, the digital footprint is growing enormously. Digital footprint is also something that I guess a lot we need to raise awareness around it or be more aware about the implications of especially increasing children's digital footprint even before they can consent to their data being shared or they have any understanding of how things are going to be used, right? So that is something I always even with my own baby, I try to be mindful of and not share photos, and if I do, it's just the backside or put a emoji like you mentioned. But Mo, did you have any thoughts about sharing?
I genuinely feel a lot of the content I followed once Zoe was born was helping me understand, okay, how do I deal with Zoe? How do I like manage Zoe, right? And I feel like it was very like educational in its way. Like, for example, Big Little Feelings or like these are like platforms which sort of taught me or like the baby-led weaning groups, right? Which sort of taught me like on how to it sort of gave me a visual picture. And I'm usually a visual learner more than like a theoretical or like a just abstract learner. So like when I can really see something happening in place, I'm able to adapt that into my way of parenting quite easily. So for me, that was like super useful. So that's the useful side of like sharenting, like where parent, and I genuinely think like that's the side where parents are being brave enough to share their vulnerable moments or their, messy moments on the internet for someone else to learn from those experiences, right? However, I think over a period of time, just in the last 2 to 3 years, even groups like Big Little Feelings and like other BLW groups are blurring children faces, because I guess the education has gotten to all of these people. How now I think all these different platforms are also starting to recognize. But I guess where it's getting super tricky is on the YouTube side of things, where it's actually like for monetizing purposes, right? So your child is constantly there from birth till, um, you know, till they're, I don't know, 11, 12, when they're sort of in a phase where they're able to say that, hey, I don't want the camera. Some parents acknowledge that and remove them off their videos. Some parents don't, because it's actually a money making. I mean, it is what for a lot of these family vloggers, it's basically their main primary income.
Yeah.
So they are sustaining life because of their children on camera, all their stories on camera. So I guess that's where it gets like a little tricky for me. So I guess that's like an educational side of putting things out, which has been super useful. But having said that, I think the risk of having your child on the internet outweighs even the educational side. So I would just generally not want children to be on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's like, let them be on the internet once they turn 18. Like, you give them the tool, and then let them make a decision if they want to be on it or not. We've had conversations. Zoe might just come up and be like, why didn't you all have me on the internet before? Why didn't you all create an account for me? Why didn't
I'm super comfortable with. Oh, so that's interesting. So digital footprint. There is also sort of digital real estate, right?
Yeah.
So when Twitter was just launched, if you got the tag board, let's say board is like a contested, like a one word, like a catchy thing. If you have that handle, you can now today it's worth like X amount, like you can sell it, right? So one thing that they say is like, okay, get your child's email address. So this one, I have not done it yet actually. We can get like her one domain, Zoya, whatever. Get one email. I can reserve like her Twitter account, Blue Sky, Facebook, whatever. Every new platform comes out, I'll sit and make accounts. I'll keep it in one folder in my password manager. When she turns 18, I'm like, here's your digital inheritance. You do what you want, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Which is very different from like the mums posting videos or photos, whatever, to the child's account that they're operating on the child's behalf. Then the caption is like, "Mommy changed me today and mommy took me to the park." Like that, the whole dissonance between that is like too much for my brain to handle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then the
I think
child
it's
coming
important.
saying, sorry, go for it.
And I think it's important for us to also not be judgmental about
Oh,
it.
100%.
Because I think every parent has a different view on how they want to be able to bring up their child in this in this world of technology, right? And everyone has a very different understanding. We have a very like paranoid understanding of it, and hence our approach is that way as well. But there are so many parents who have a very neutral approach to it, who have a very neutral understanding, may understand the repercussions or the consequences, or may not, and that's okay. But they're just doing what they know best,
What they feel is.
and what they feel is best. And I think it's important to acknowledge that as well. And I think as parents are getting to know more, as parents are learning more, they're also like making shifts. They're also making changes.
Absolutely.
But that shouldn't be like, oh, I mean, that shouldn't put them on a guilt trip of, oh, I did all of this before. Now what do I do? Right? Have I spoiled my entire life of my child? And that's not the case. You did what you did with the best knowledge of your understanding and your ability to sort of understand the technology or the world of technology or the world of social media at best, and you did your best. And you're making, if you decide to make changes, great. If you don't decide to make changes, that's also fine. Now, as long as you're not harming the child in any way. Like, for example, I don't know if you know, in the US, there's this 8 Passengers is like a vlogger who did like massive family vlogging, and she had all her 8 children in it. But like, she very deliberately broke her children down behind the screen. So in front of the screen, you would see them as a happy family, but actually behind the screen, there was a lot of like yelling, shouting, getting them to be happy in front of the screen, getting them to like do things in front of the screen that they weren't comfortable, getting them to talk about things that they weren't comfortable about. But like all of those were now that's where it like really like now that
Crosses a line.
it crosses like a very very like yeah that's just abuse, that's child abuse after a point, right? So then yeah, so I guess that's the thing, like when you're doing very naive things without your knowledge,
With your best
with your
intention.
best
Yeah.
intention, it's all right. But as if someone's willing to have a conversation with you as a parent and you're willing to engage in that conversation and learn about more things, that's great. But yeah, I feel like all parents are trying to do the best that they can at any given point of time with the
Yeah.
resources that they have and the knowledge that
Actually,
they
thank you.
have.
No, thank you for saying this because, like, as much as I know that whatever some choices we're making are like bad,
Yeah.
like that, I mean, it's very clear that something we're actively making mistakes on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So that knowledge is there. So I would want to be treated with
Kindness.
not kindness,
Yeah.
for other parents to hold a non-judgmental space for me. But when it comes to tech, the paranoia leads me to then be judgmental outwards,
Yeah.
right? In a way that's like not really helpful. So thank you for sharing that. What is the other thing you said about? Also, the thing about the 8 passengers, I think, is still in court. So for legal purposes, we should say that those are allegations.
No,
Oh, it's fully clear. Okay, then fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, oh,
No.
there's some gray area to it. And can I share one thought of just like the? Did you have another question or just one thought about like that the tech and?
No, totally. Go for it. Like I was just gonna start rapping at like moving towards a hopeful future, right? Like
One
how do we
small
build
thing,
a
and
hopeful
I feel like
future?
I want to hear just Mo's
Yeah.
perspective on this. So this is how it is in my head, and like I'll share it. The I feel like if you asked me, okay, Joel, what is your plan for introducing Zoe to alcohol, right? For example, I'd be like, hey, no alcohol till you are 18. We will have 1 ounce of beer when you're 16. We'll do it together at home. When you're 12, maybe one sip or something, depending on the vibe or whatever, right? And then here, at any point, if you make us, if the child is like, no, my friends are thing, or my friend's dad did such and such thing, I'd be like, hey, look, like this is the pros, this is the cons, this is the decision we're taking for our family, and hey, by the way, here's this thing. It can be used in these ways. It has these downsides. These are these stories, and these are the pros. These are the cons. This is how our family integrates, let's say, alcohol into when we have get-togethers, when we have parties. This is how we use it when we socialize, and like here's the vibe, right? So alcohol being introduced in this sort of gradual, family-grounded way for me is very clearly better than some of the kids I went to college with who had zero alcohol usage come to college and they fully go like fully out of control with it. And it leads to like bad outcomes also, like, people get into accidents and different things happen. So, there's a clear thing of like introducing it gradually, talking about it, so that part is very straightforward. Where I'm maybe more stressed out about technology than I am with alcohol, which is alcohol. I'm like more stressed out about technology is where like I feel like I also don't have a good handle on the pros and the cons. And I feel like as a society, we're still figuring out the pros and the cons. So,
Yeah.
like, for me to tell my child, this is how I use social media, I can't even confidently say this is
A good
why.
way of
This is
doing
a good way.
it. Yeah.
So my instinct is to be more harsh with tech than with alcohol. At the same time, social media is more accepted than alcohol. So the pressure around like, bro, you're being to this, to that, it feels to me more dangerous than alcohol and more accepted than alcohol.
Mm.
So I would be more chill about alcohol than I would be about social media. It's just how it's in my brain.
And I think just to sort of uh, add on to your point, which is I mean not just add on, but like I think more than these things of like tech, alcohol, drugs, whatever, I think it's about the thinking process we develop in our children. This is how I am looking at it, right? Like it's easy to get stressed out because God knows in like 10 years what else we'll need to be stressed out about. There'll be so many other things we need to be. I don't know, flying cars that they can take. Oh, God knows what it is, right? Or like robots that they need to become. They'll become like girlfriends or boyfriends.
Dating AI, girlfriends, yeah.
Whatever, right? So God knows what we. So there are only going to be constantly things that will come our way that we need to be fearful of or be scared about. But I think if we can establish some amount of like thinking process that is like clear for our children, then, and what I mean by thinking is this ability to be like, I think, and we need to sort of do that in front of them so that they can learn from we need to role model that. And that is basically when we make a decision, we can also go back on that decision. So, say for example, we tell our children to not do something, and they actually come back with like, "Hey, you know what? I have a I have a different opinion about this." Now, as parents, can we sit down and be like, "Okay, that opinion really makes sense. We retract what we said, and we're changing the way we are thinking." So, if we are able to role model that a little bit with our children, then I think they will be, when they're in a position where they'll have to go and like, smoke up with a person or take an alcoholic drink, or go meet an AI robot to become like best friends with, whatever it is, I mean,
No, no,
whatever
fair
it could potentially look like, they're able to be like, hey, okay, I said yes to my friend, but I don't think this is right. And they're able to navigate between what is right and wrong at that point. And they're able to retract, being like, hey, actually, you know what? I'm okay. I'm good. I don't feel like, wanting to do that. And I'm okay doing that. And I think that's, and sometimes, this, the culture in on the internet can be like, when you say no, you have to stick by your no. When there is like no means a no and all of that, I feel sometimes it can play out very like rigidly for our children. And it's important that our children sort of notice that sometimes our parents will say no and they can take that back, because we might have like a good way of, we might have a counter argument for that no, and that might be a good way of looking at things. Right. And I think, yeah, I guess that's just
No, that's huge. Like,
that thinking process, and that ability for our children to feel safe in making decisions for themselves, and knowing that they're backed, those decisions are backed by their parents, or whoever their grown up is, their adult in their life, and they're able to navigate life in that way.
Sure.
So, and even when they do something wrong, then they, if we can build the
Safety.
safe, or their, I don't know, their skill set to be able to learn from those mistakes and move past them, rather than getting stuck in those mistakes. I guess
Absolutely.
that's
The
that's just my way of thinking. Like,
no, absolutely.
because otherwise it's too overwhelming if I had to control every situation. I don't think I'll be able to. So I'd rather just then control how I'm, like, what the upbringing is
Reacting.
like. So,
Like she should trust that we'll have her back.
yeah.
She should trust herself that she can learn from, like, make a mistake and learn from it or change
Yeah.
her mind. And then, like, essentially what you're talking about is like, can we build in her own self trust?
Yeah.
That, like, hey, this, I said yes, but it feels off. I wanna be able to change.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
That's very.
massive.
You guys have put some serious thought into this. I genuinely enjoyed hearing both your perspectives. And you're right, like, especially social media is a space where not very often we come across people accepting their mistakes, or, you know, openly admitting that they may have been wrong in certain times, or what they said, right? And we need to encourage more of that, because that way, that shows growth, that shows learning. But also, to Joel's previous point, right? I was thinking, uh, we of course, we live in a society where there are laws, right? In our day-to-day lives, it's illegal to do certain things. It's illegal to get drunk and drive. You need to be, 16 or 18 and have a license in order to have, to be able to drive. But there are also some unseen rules that people follow, right? For example, you go to a food court and you're sitting next to a person who bought a juicy burger. You're not going to go and lick that person's burger, because that's not a good rule, right? So, the same set of rules probably need to apply in our digital lives as well, where, we need to have some sort of norms as a society about what we collectively think are traits of a good digital person versus a bad digital person, right? So, how do we raise good digital citizens for the future, which is where I want to pivot next, right? I want to, before we close off, ask your thoughts on, you know, what is it that makes you feel hopeful about raising Zoya in this era, right? Like, what kind of a world you hope she's going to grow up to be a part of?
I think I want you to answer this one first.
I think the possibilities are endless in the world we live in right now. I'm at least personally, I'm in a phase where I'm like, I mean, the world is a beautiful place, and right now is the great time to live, and a great time to sort of like, be able to achieve your dreams and achieve what you want to be able to do. And I think that's the mentality I'd like to sort of pass down to Zoya as well. And it's a great time to be kind, nice to others, good to yourself. Um, and be able to sort of like function from a space of peace, right? And I think we need more children who can come from that space. I think the world really requires more children, more adults who can come from a space of peace, who can come from a space of empathy, come from a space of understanding. With everything that's going on in the world right now, with the wars, with, uh, children, women, civic citizens sort of being harmed in ways that are so unprecedented, or maybe are so more visual right now to us, it's very easy for us to think that, oh, like this is doomsday, like the world is like, it's like, we're all collapsing, humanity is collapsing. But I think now is the time when we need to really find that, I don't know, like find the hope in the fact that actually our children are going to make a difference, and they're going to go out in this world that is going to be where they can be authentic and where they can really do good in the society. And I think as parents, what we are sort of like enabling is creating that space. Like, can we ensure that we are showing up in with a positive frame of mind? Can we show up with kindness? Can we show up with heart? Can we show up with this with peacefulness within our space in a way that our child feels safe to do that and multiply that in her own way? So
I think I just want to end on that. Like the no, I was going to say some stuff about, you know, this is entering the public consciousness more, and more people are looking at this and thinking about this kind of thing. In terms of like becoming good digital citizens, I think it comes down to like there are communities forming, or like even let's say Roblox is like a big sort of online game. It was sort of this space where like kids were able to create content and games and share that with each other. It sort of became commercial in a way that wasn't healthy, and then like changes I think are happening now to kind of restore some sense of that. So I feel like maybe again, as you were saying earlier, like we don't know where things will go. I'm imagining we could have like digital kindergartens where like there's no ads, there's no something. Again, we don't know how this stuff is evolving, but like the fact that there's more conversation, I feel hopeful that more safe spaces will emerge. These conventions will emerge. But I feel like what you said was really cool. Of like the real hope is internal. It's I mean,
yeah,
however much anything happens externally,
yeah,
to the degree that you can cultivate your own groundedness and
yeah,
centeredness and hope, you can then show up kindly for each other.
yeah,
You can then we can show up kindly for the child,
yeah,
and then she takes that out sort of into the. And I guess the other point is that you can always, like especially with with children, you can always sort of start again.
yeah.
Like you can make a mistake now, and then in the next 2 minutes you can be like, hey, you know what, I'm sorry about that. And
You
like
can
you can keep
can
beginning
course
again.
correct.
Yeah, there's never a
And
oh no, it's
and
forever screwed.
they're so accepting of the correction as well. In fact, like, in fact, want you to evolve, and
Yeah,
like they want you to change
yeah.
your
I mean,
mistakes.
just yesterday, there was sort of a bit of a meltdown before bath time. Actually, no, ironically, there was no meltdown. She was just in one extremely happy mode, and she's like
Yeah.
running around in circles kind of thing. And we're like, dude, like it's bath time. Like you have to go bath. And then she's like, no, I just have so much energy. So we're like, okay. So
And she
we all
itself
said, yeah,
said, "Can we
right?
do rainbow
Yeah.
meditation?"
So I'm like, okay, just everybody sit down first. She's like, no, Dad, I want to go spinny. So then she's spinning. So then I'm like, so uh, I'm watching some show that she was watching, and the characters like hug themselves and do like I think it's a meditation thing that
Yeah,
hug and release
release.
to de-stress.
Yeah.
She's like, no, Dada, I will do rainbow meditation, which is
Yeah.
some like you dip your hands in imaginary paint and then you
Paint.
breathe in and breathe out kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she's like, let's do that. We did it. All three of us are now much more calm. I feel
Yeah.
like we two were
We
more
were more because we were
more
like
calm. We were like highly dysregulated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she was just like, she got happier because we were happier. And then they just sort of went into bath, like it was
Yeah.
this more thing. So, it went from this highly like, kind of moment to like, yeah,
Yeah.
like, spinny is fun, but now it's bath time.
And that brings me to the point that I think a lot to do with parenting in today's age and time has to do with patience,
Yeah.
which is like really being able to sit with your own uncomfortableness, but also like at that point with what's happening with with your child, and like being able to like really be patient and grounded for your child. And I think that's the work. I think a big part of it is like just being able to regulate yourself so that you can co-regulate your child, right? And I think, yeah, I guess
And we have no time. There's meetings, there's work,
there's
there's
work, there's
doing.
like there is, and movie to watch, there is YouTube videos to like stacked up on your wish list,
Yeah,
there is
it's
Instagram things to do, there is friends to meet, there's just so much, like there's so much happening around us. And I think that's what I've noticed, at least like for myself, which is like you really need to change your expectations around yourself once you become a parent. And that's just this season of life requires you to be present and present with your child. It doesn't if that means you can't go meet your friends on a Saturday night which you used to probably do, that's the way it is going to be for the next few years. If it means that you can't watch a movie every night, that's the way it's going to sort of be. Like me and Joel, before we had Zoya, we used to literally every quarter have like a review meeting of like, how is
like
our
next time chill.
how is like, can we dream about the future? Can we do all of these things? And in the last 3 years, we're up like pressure cookers. Like once in a month, we'll have like a pressure cooker moment, and that's when we sort of like, figure things out, right? And we're figuring out how to like, balance that out, and how do we, because we both are very people, like we have to communicate to be able to figure out stuff out. And if we don't communicate, we know it's not going to like get like sorted out on its own. So yeah, I
So,
guess.
so things became less pressure cooking. Like we switched out of survival mode once we released expectation that we should be
Yeah.
blissful and
Yeah.
once we're like, oh, this is survival mode, it became less survival.
Less of, yeah. The moment we agreed to that fact that, this is the season of life we're going to be living in. I don't think I'll be able to grow in my career right now. I need to take a pause. I need to take a break. And that's the season of life. Like that's the way it's going to be. And like, there will always, like the moment I recognize any phase is not going to be forever, it made life so much more easier for us. And I think that's just made us be more present with our child, and just made us believe that, like, this is the right time to, like, for a long time I felt like now is not the right time to have children, but I'm like, right now I'm my prime belief that everyone should have children. Like, now is the right time to have children, because we need more parents who do a good job at parenting, and who are, no definite, I don't have any definition, who can do their best at parenting and raise children who can have a hopeful future, and who can create a world which is a better place to live in than where we are right now. So yeah.
I was just going to do that. That's beautiful. I always end this show by asking my guests one parenting rule and one tech rule that you have in your life, something short, something memorable that other parents can take away as well. So, is there one parenting and one tech rule you'd like to share with us?
I think one parenting rule, I think if I had to say this now, and I think the temptation is to like act like I've been parenting for so many years, but I only have a 3-year-old and I only have one. So, but I think like the biggest thing is just slow down. Like at any stage, at any problem, whatever is going on, just not to swear on this, but slow the F down. Like you really, really need to slow down. You need to slow down, not you telling the kid to slow down.
Yeah.
So the parenting rule is just, the more tense things get, the more dysregulated everybody is, just slow down, right? That would be the parenting role.
Can I
You want to do the parenting role? You want to do the tech?
Yeah. So you can do the parenting.
Yeah.
Do the tech. We'll
No, I think
reverse.
she was asking one each.
Oh, is it?
So we do, what is my one parenting and
No,
tech
it's
one?
just together as a couple.
Oh, okay. Do that.
Because I agree with you on the parenting role. I guess slowing down is just something that we have to practice in. And like now I've slowly gotten into meditation, which is sort of really helping me slow down as an individual so I can slow down for the child. But yeah, the tech rule that I genuinely think that, we can follow, and we need to get better at following as well, is how can screen, like whatever we're introducing right now, the only thing we introduce is screen time for her. That's the only technology that she has in her life. Can we do together? Like, it's not something that she just sits with on her own and just watches when we are doing something else.
Yeah.
Can it be a activity that we do together, and it's not something that she does on her own? Because I can already notice patterns of, like, for example, even Zoya, just the 10 minutes she watches in the morning and evening, she's so glued. Like, these shows can really make you like,
Yeah.
not even hear the voice behind you. And for me, that's a little scary.
And
Like
it's
when
not
you're
even
so like,
Cocomelon or whatever. It's some
it-
like child friendly,
yeah,
whatever. So like we're doing the good shows.
yeah.
And she's still just like locked in. And
She's
she's
just so
like
locked
holding
in.
her thing to her face and like she's like in
Yeah.
it. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
And I'm like, just 10 minutes of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't even imagine if she's going to be like,
Yeah.
if when time comes and when she gets access to it unlimited, then what will this feel like? Like this, that's just so like, yeah, I guess like just figuring that out. Like, can this happen together as like a family activity rather than like a individual sideload activity for her? So
Good ones, really good ones. I think very unique ones that I'm perhaps also going to take away and think about slowing down as well as doing screen time or any tech time as a family activity. Um, it's been amazing talking with both of you, Joel and Mo. You guys are wonderful parents. You guys are doing an exceptional job. You're doing your best, like you mentioned. And I'm hoping we continue building this community, especially with you, Mo, now aspiring to become a parent coach as well. We hope to build this community with you, with all of us around, sharing with each other things that work and raising digitally resilient kids and future proofing their future.
yeah, lovely.
Thanks
Thank
so
you so
much,
much, Deepa, for having us and for hosting us. And thank you for this idea. I guess it's great to sort of like really be able to bring in people with knowledge, people who are figuring it out on the go, and people who are sort of like just want to understand how to do it when they start doing it, right? Like, I guess it meets everyone's sort of purpose. So I guess, yeah, thank you so much for sort of like bringing us all together and having this conversation. I think it's really the need of the hour at the moment for for people to sort of like talk about their experiences in a more vulnerable, authentic way. So yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for watching, everybody. And I guess we'll sign off now.
Yes, thank you.